Sometimes it can take over 30 years for a community promise to be kept. In 2018, the San Diego community of City Heights celebrates the opening of the Center Line. This bus rapid transit system connects residents to downtown in 8 minutes and to North County schools and job prospects.
It means for City Heights that we can go to jobs. They won't have to rely on their cars. They can take the bus.
The Center Line is part of the State Route 15 Complete Corridor, which includes a park built on top of the freeway, a bike path, transit plazas, and more. These features didn't just show up out of nowhere. They're deeply rooted in community organizing and advocacy.
Caltrans decided, okay, we're going to convert part of 40th Street, the only 2 miles between Canada and all the way down to South Bay, that the freeway, the I-15, wasn't complete. They called it the missing link.
The State Route 15 freeway was proposed to replace 40th Street and 8 blocks of homes and businesses in Mid-City. The first version of the project in 1975 included no plans to adequately mitigate this impact.
This freeway was going to cut the community of City Heights in half. It was the first time I'd heard this impact called community cohesion. And so they said this was an adverse impact that needed to be mitigated, and that the builders of the freeway, Caltrans, had to do that.
Around that time, neighboring communities had faced similar threats of freeways dividing their communities in half. A Southeast San Diego-based organization called the Black Federation, led by civil rights leader Vernon Sukumu, led a successful campaign to prevent the construction of the SR-252 in the Southcrest neighborhood.
They basically were successful in stopping the freeway. In terms of lessons learned, it showed the value and the strength of community organizing. That was what kind of inspired us, that this community can play a role, and what we had to do is come up with an alternative. The real question was, if the freeway was going to come through, how could we make it a win-win for both the region in terms of a freeway, but also for the community in which it went through.
In the late 70s, Mid-City residents used the planned SR-15 to organize people to participate in the Mid-City community planning process.
There were not any community organizations doing anything about land use in this part of town. A number of us put together a petition to the City Council on creating a community planning group in Mid-City, and the City Council said no. Well, that came back to really haunt them.
In 1981, the City Heights Community Development Corporation was formed. As more residents expressed concerns with the original freeway plans, the project was reevaluated.
Because we created this institutional infrastructure, we were able to continue to fight.
City Heights Community Development Corporation launched a community planning process called the Visions Project, which sought to underground the freeway and cover 8 blocks of it with parks, transit plazas, and development of housing and businesses.
The reason behind the covers was to be able to create land and put amenities on them. You could put a library on it, you could put the post office on it, you could put a store on it. They're constructed in a way that this is available land that we're creating to offset what is being taken away.
The city commissioned their own study in 1988, which recommended 5 blocks of freeway cover. As negotiations ensued, Caltrans moved forward with condemning 8 blocks displacing homes and businesses. The 8 abandoned blocks began to create social problems and stigma in City Heights.
It became a place of neglect. Neglect by citizens who had no amenities to kind of keep the place clean, nor was there any sense of responsibility on the city of San Diego. There's no lights there, no trash cans, there's nothing there. And it was ugly. It was a place you would avoid.
Responding to community concerns, Caltrans and the city demolished the abandoned houses and allowed City Heights Community Development Corporation to build the City Heights Community Garden on the land.
It initially was about a half of a city block. It didn't go all the way from one side to the other, but pretty close. And then it doubled in size, close to a city block. We were offering an alternative narrative to City Heights, crime capital of the world. We were offering the narrative of City Heights, home of the dancing carrots, in this community garden.
The community garden served as a platform for community organizing and as a space for residents to plant roots in the community of City Heights, while cultivating community ownership of the SR-15 corridor.
It was a wonderful opportunity to really explore a democratic process of figuring out how people could participate, where you have language issues, you have cultural issues, but how could you act in a collective way?
By this time, the city wanted to move forward with only 2 blocks of cover. Community advocacy was effective at getting the city of San Diego to recommend 4 instead. Caltrans, however, was concerned that the Visions project would take too long to construct and that funding wasn't available. There were competing ideas on how to move forward with freeway construction. Council member John Hartley was quoted as saying, "Caltrans would rather build the freeway as quickly as possible. They're not against the Visions, but basically, they'd rather it would go away." At a special city council meeting held in City Heights on May 21, 1991, over 300 community members attended. The vast majority reportedly spoke in favor of the Visions project, while half a dozen spoke out against it due to concerns that the project would take too long. On July 23, 1991, City Council voted unanimously to support the 4-block cover version of the Visions project, which was recommended by the city manager. Caltrans was ready to move forward with 1 block of cover as called for in their 1987 plan. Director of Caltrans, Norm Larson, informed the council in 1991, "We are going to begin construction January 1st, no matter what you do." Councilmember Hartley responded, "Frankly, if those details are not handled, I will do everything I can do to stop that freeway." A small group of residents called I-15 Now opposed the Visions project. They wanted the freeway completed as soon as possible, and they organized followers.
That position served the agenda of Caltrans quite well.
At an April 6, 1992 hearing, 30 residents spoke against the Visions project. However, at the same hearing, City Heights Community Development Corporation delivered 3,000 signed petitions in support. Nevertheless, behind the scenes, political support for the Visions project was dissolving.
We were under the impression that we had support all the way up into the vote. I can remember to this day getting a call to my office prior to the council hearing indicating that there were problems and that the council was not going to vote for it. So it was a last-minute surprise to us.
The effort took a turn at a council hearing on April 27, 1992. Instead of voting on the Visions project, the City Council voted to move forward on the 1987 Caltrans plan for only 1 block of freeway cover.
The bare motion to my colleagues is to proceed with the freeway, to build the freeway as quickly as possible, as soon as possible.
The one vote that made the difference was our guy, and he folded. He changed his vote, and he went with the rest of them.
Before I ever knew Jim Bleisner, I knew of him because I heard of the man he was carried out of the chambers with a string of 4-letter words after the vote.
The only thing I did at that point was to stand up and accuse him of being a sellout and do it in public as loud as I could, as many times as I could, until the police removed us from the chambers.
We felt that we, to a large extent, had been betrayed by the city.
Community members lost the battle for 4 blocks, but still won a block of cover for a park, 2 freeway-adjacent parks, 2 pedestrian bike bridges, 2 transit plazas, a parallel running bikeway, and the Centerline bus rapid transit stations. These commitments were included in a Memorandum of Understanding in 1993.
So there were successes. I think there was disappointment that we didn't get everything. In some respects, it's kind of like a consolation prize. I think overall it was a big success for the community.
The SR-15 went to construction in the late 1990s and opened to traffic in 2000. A few years later, Terralta Park was completed, the first freeway cover park in California. 15 years after the City Council vote that defined the SR-15, the community was hit with the news that the inline bus rapid transit concept was now being rejected. Caltrans Chief of Traffic Operations cited safety concerns.
As someone who was from this community, it gave a sense of what we always assumed people who didn't live in this community thought about us. That it was okay to break a promise, that we weren't worthy of that level of investment, that you could say one thing and do another.
So when they came up with the ruling that it was too dangerous, that wasn't going to work, we didn't accept that, and so we organized around forcing them to change that decision.
City Heights CDC fought back and organized rush hour rallies, meetings with elected officials, calls to actions at public hearings, press conferences, and forums for candidates running for office in order to save the center line.
We will fight back. We will work hard, and we're going to write every petitions we can, and we're going to go to city council, and we're going to speak about it, and we're going to tell and show this letter that this director have write to us, and we're going to show them what they have promised for the community and that they're contradicting their two languages.
At the urging of the community and then Councilmember Tony Atkins, Caltrans announced that they would support the inline bus rapid transit concept. SANDAG, the San Diego Association of Governments, created a community working group which reviewed 20 transit station design alternatives and narrowed them down to 4. In 2011, Caltrans announced that they had a preferred alternative, the center line.
To finally see elements of the visions project from the 80s and 90s, to finally see that come to fruition. And even though there was that big setback, we know that the community was victorious in many ways.
A culture of resilience was cultivated from the work of community advocates that continues to impact the region today. But the story of the center line is that it's possible for communities to participate in the planning process and influence plans through citizen activism and community organizing.
Sometimes instead of fighting the community, which is start by listening to the community.
That is a urban monument to citizen activism. I cannot say that often enough and loud enough. We saw opportunity in a